MicroBrewr Podcast, Session 25.
Welcome to MicroBrewr Podcast, going deep to get inside the craft beer industry and inside the heads of people who work there. Here's your host, Nathan Pierce.
Welcome to MicroBrewr Podcast. We talk about everything craft beer related with the focus for people looking at starting their own microbreweries or wanting to take their existing breweries to the next level. I'm your host, Nathan Pierce. Thanks for listening all the way up to episode 25. I can't believe it's episode 25. I don't know. It's like a quarter of the way through 100. It seems significant somehow. I started in episode 13, and so this is the 13th episode that I've done so far after Joe Shellerud started this podcast and let me take over. Still thankful for that. I've been having such a great time, and I'm glad you all are joining me on this journey. I hope you're getting a lot out of it. We have show notes for the episode at microbrewer.com/Session 25. The website has show notes and resources for every episode, plus other content also. That's at microbrewer.com. And don't forget about the book list that I just added. Knowledge is key to starting your brewery. So reading is essential, and I ask every guest if they could recommend a book to help us along our way in starting a successful brewery. So I've compiled a list of all the books that everybody has recommended with the number of times that each book has been recommended. So that's at microbrewer.com/book list. And please subscribe in iTunes or Stitcher if you like the show so you won't miss any episodes. It automatically sends them straight to you. And while you're in iTunes, please leave a review. I want the feedback. I want to hear what's working, what you guys like, and what you don't like too. Give me your honest feedback. And really, it helps with searches too, in case anybody else is looking for the show. If you need a link to find it in iTunes, there's a web page on our site. It's at microbrewer.com/iTunes, and that has a link that'll go over to it. In this episode, I talk with Eric Allen from Studio Brew in Kingsport, Tennessee. It's kind of a long show. Might be the longest one so far, but there's so many great stories. I didn't want to cut it down. Eric tells us about his religious experience, practically a religious experience. He said the first time he went to a homebrew club in 2009. And then he had a photography studio at home that he turned into a nano brewery, where they started contract brewing to get situated. And now they're kind of doing their own thing and getting ready to expand to a 20,000 square foot facility in Bristol, Virginia, not far away from where they're at. They're going to have a 15 barrel system with a full bottling line. So Eric runs us through that whole process of dealing with all the different public agencies for getting permits for a brewery at his own house, or technically adjacent to his house, and also opening up the new expanded facility as well. There's tons of gems in this episode, all kinds of great information. I hope you enjoy it. Here's the interview. Hey, Eric, I introduce you to the listeners. Let's take a few minutes and you can tell us more about you and your brewery.
Well, thank you so much, Nathan. This is Eric Allen with Studio Brew. We're a little nano brewery located out of northeast Tennessee, up in Bristol, Kingsport, Johnson City area, one of the home of the NASCAR shortest track. Got into home brewing basically in 2009 through a friend of mine named Ernie Gunn. Him and I were going back and forth talking about getting into the home brewing, and it was always one of those, well, I'll go to a meeting if you'll go. And there was a club here, the State of Franklin Homebrewers. We ended up going to one of their meetings, over at Depot Street Brewery over in Jonesboro, Tennessee. And it's I'll try to keep it quick, but it's a great story. We walked in and went upstairs where these home brewers were meeting, and there's a guy there named Jamie McGinnis standing at the top of the step. As I go walking up, he looks at me and goes, "I've never seen the likes of somebody like you." And I replied, "Well, nor have I seen anybody like you." And he goes, You happen to like beer?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "I happen to have one." Asked me if I had a glass. I said, "No." He goes, "Well, I happen to have an extra one." So he popped this incredible wee heavy and poured it and let me taste it. And I was like, "You made this?" And he goes, "Yes, I did." I'm like, "Can I make something like this?" And he goes, "And beyond." Well, we ended up getting upstairs and having a great time. I came home. My wife was in bed. And I woke her up. And she goes, "How was it?" I was like, "Gee whiz, it was like a religious experience. These people are great. They're funny. They're fun. They're willing to teach you. They share beer. It's all about the love of beer. I'm in." The next thing you know, I started jumping right into all grain and brewed 7 beers within 1 week. And from there, it just kind of took off. Little bit I know that one of my friends said, "This is probably one of the best beers I ever had. You ought to look at doing this professionally." Well, I should have thought about that for a minute because he was drinking free beer. Well, I asked myself, just how hard can it be to open up a brewery? And then it began. And my wife and I, proceeded going after the TTB and local state and county direction to get permitted and become legal. And it's interesting, our brewery name is Studio Brew, and that came about, and I'm actually a commercial and advertising photographer for over 32 years. My wife and I ended up building this studio for a photography company, and we really had no intention of living out this area. And when we finished it 25 years ago, we thought, well, it'd be kind of neat to live here. So we actually designed and built a house sharing an exterior wall from the studio. Little did we know this would be our salvation when it came to the fact of actually becoming a nano brewery. During the age of digital imaging and green screens, I no longer needed the studio. So we cleaned it up one day and converted it into a nano brewery. The lab, dark room, became now a yeast lab, and thus the name Studio Brew. So here we are in 2014 with growing pains. We started looking at expanding and creating a larger brewery, and the whole thing has just been one rocket ride ever since.
That's pretty rad that your home shares a wall with your brewery. You don't have a long commute, and your home always smells nice like wort, huh?
Yeah, and it was interesting. The TTB, they said, "You cannot have a brewery in your house." And I was like, "It's not. It's actually 2 separate buildings that share an exterior wall. So, it's all separate water, all separate HVAC and the whole thing. But yeah, we walk out one door and walk about 15 feet and go in another door, and there we are, pure paradise, walking in, seeing fermenters doing what they do best. But it's a cool story because the state of Tennessee was open to it, and the county was a little reluctant, but they permitted my property to be commercial. So it's totally legal. It's all in place, and that's what due diligence will get you if you just persistent enough.
Man, you're giving me so many good nuggets. First, I want to ask you about the TTB. The Alcohol, Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau told you that you can't have a brewery in your home. So that's something that I've wondered about because I hear about nano breweries just even sometimes opening up in their garage. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Maybe it's like an urban legend. So would this be not allowed by the TTB?
Well, again, yeah, from all the information, and this is going back to originally when we started pursuing this, but, you cannot actually have a brewery in your home I've heard of people having nano breweries or starting breweries in their garage. I'm sure if it's not existing or connecting to or sharing an interior wall, I could see where that goes through. With us, it was interesting because the person I was talking with, they said, "Well, you do not have an entrance going in from your house to your brewery, right, or your studio." It's like, you are correct. It's totally independent, self-supporting, and that was a great opportunity to make it happen because it was an exterior wall. Our persistence is, well, we're just stubborn, but they're great people to work with, and we followed everything like they wanted us to, and we didn't step into a gray area or anything of that nature. So that's the reason why it worked so well. It took a little while, but it worked. The county was the one that gave us the most concern. Once that got taken care of, we actually had to, you'll love this, we actually had to send out letters to all our neighbors, surrounding neighbors, that our intent was to put in a brewery. And if they had any questions or comments or concerns or negative feedback, we needed to know. We had one individual ask what were our hours and can he bring his own growlers over. My father-in-law is one of the neighbors, and now I've become his favorite son-in-law.
Perfect. You see him pretty often, I'll bet.
Yeah. It's kind of in and out kind of a thing.
Eric, it was so cool hearing you tell the story about when you went into that the homebrew club. And I was actually just having a birthday dinner across the street with some neighbors last night, and I was telling them, I got into wine before I got into beer, and I have to admit, I still like wine better, but there's a sense of community surrounding craft beer that I feel does not surround wine. There's some pretty neat interactions, and I've met a lot of cool people at the wine tasting room and made some really good friends and whatnot. But I wouldn't go so far to say maybe it's a religion like you experienced, a religious experience at the homebrew club, but there is a pretty neat sense of community. So tell us more about the community where Studio Brew is, and even about where you're planning to expand to also.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, it was really interesting. Like I mentioned, Ernie Dunn is a great friend of mine, and him and I went to the state of Franklin Homebrewers Club. And what's interesting is, fast forward a couple of years, Ernie has actually stepped out and created another homebrewing club, Tri-City Beer Alliance, and from some of the other members of the state of Franklin, you've got Over Mountain Brewing Club. So this area, community in the Appalachia, Northeast Tennessee, and Southwest Virginia, is just a great wealth of really cool people that are designing some wonderful home brews. And, when I decided to become a professional brewer and open up Studio Brew, there was Depot Street, like I said, in Jonesboro, Tennessee, and then there was one that opened up called Wolf Hills out of Abingdon, Virginia. And it was pretty much just the three of us, and me being the little guy. Well, now, gee whiz, there's three more breweries opening up, and one is just opened up in Bristol, Tennessee side, Folsom River Brewery. And then we've got Sleepy Owl in Kingsport downtown, Brian Conister, great guy, wonderful beers. It's just amazing. In a very short period of time, there'll probably be 7 or 8 breweries opening up right here in this corridor of Highway 26 and 81. And a lot of people head over to the mountains, over to Asheville, where some incredible breweries are. But now they've got a good, way station, resting point. Come in and have some samples of some great beers in this location. Now, for us, I'm a Tennessean by choice. I'm actually a transplant from from the Midwest. We created our brewery in Northeast Tennessee, and everything was really doing well. Then I started creating some beers that seemed to get a little higher than what the state allows. So quickly had to back off on that. We're members of the Tennessee Homebrewers Guild. Linus from Yazoo, the president, great bunch of people. But then when we decided we wanted to expand, we looked at downtown Kingsport and Bristol, Tennessee, staying on the Tennessee side. And I was working with a great person, a good friend, Michael Sparks, part of the downtown people of Bristol, Tennessee. He showed me, gee whiz, I don't know, 12, 18 buildings on the Tennessee side, and they just didn't work. Didn't work with what we wanted to do. And I'll never forget this. He said, well, I think it's time we need to hand you over to Virginia. And I was like, well, I'm not sure I really want to move, take a brewery over to Virginia. Boy, weren't those the dumbest words. I started looking into the Commonwealth of Virginia and just how much that state loves craft brewers. We quickly realized, gee whiz, we wasted a lot of time. So started talking with Andrew Trivett and people from, the mayor, all the city council people from Bristol, Virginia, open arms. I mean, it was just amazing how the reception they gave us to start pursuing, looking at bringing our brewery in. So much so that they offered us a 20,000 square foot building. It's great history about this building. In 1909, it was actually a distillery, but it's six bricks thick, basically 3 stories. We walked in and just immediately I saw all my fermenters, all the brewing equipment in there. Quickly realized this is the place we need to be. Fabulous location. The building right now, let's face it looks like lipstick on a pig, but we know how to clean this old girl up. Got a lot of renovations that are going to be going on. Found the perfect team to work with all the way through. So it's an exciting time. We actually got some great grant monies from the state and even the Tobacco Commission and the city. Commonwealth of Virginia is a wonderful place to put a brewery.
How far is that from where you are now?
It's actually about 12 miles down the road.
Okay, so that'll be a pretty long commute, huh?
Well, comparing, I got to work. Well, currently I just got to walk 48 steps from out one door into another. Yeah, the 12 miles, basically I jump up on 81 and head north. The next thing you know, I'm right there. So, it's not that bad. Not that bad at all. And the location's primo. I mean, we're right across the park from the new country music museum, birthplace of country music in Bristol, Virginia there. We got this incredible park, beautiful creek area. It's just, we showed up there and we realized we were home.
Well, 20,000 square feet is a pretty decent sized space. How does that compare in square footage and brew house to what you're doing now?
Well, let's just say probably by about 19,500, something like that. Our brewery is relatively, like I said, it's a nano brewery. It's a little 3-barrel system. We call it the little engine that can, the little brewery that can. And, we're pumping 16, 18-hour days, keeping fermenters going. We do a lot of really cool things with bourbon barrels, rum barrels, tequila barrels. We actually ferment in them instead of just aging our beer. Came up with a neat process that seems to work really well.
And what size system are you going to be using in the new building?
Looks like we're going to go in with a Prospero system. Really researched many different companies and just fell in love with this equipment. It'll be a 15-barrel with 415 to 230s with a full bottling line. So it's really an exciting step up from a little 3-barrel.
Awesome. Sounds like some pretty cool things are ahead for Studio Brew. Now, let's get focused a little bit more. We're going to ask you some more focused questions, but first, let's frame the discussion. Are there core values, core words, or operating principles that you work by with Studio Brew?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's so many different words you can throw out there, and a lot of them are cliches. But one thing that we truly stand by is we have two core values. One is the commitment to our followers of fermentation to strive in the innovation of craft beer excellence. We really believe in that. The other thing is, since it's coming from a photographic studio, an art studio, is beer is an art, a very tasty art. And that's our tagline. So basically, we try to take the artistic approach on every beer that we create.
You have on your website a few different beers that you do, but you say that you are really focusing on contract brewing for restaurants and pubs, right?
In the beginning, we were actually doing that. We had several local restaurants that were very excited about having their own beer on tap. When we created that website, we haven't updated it in a little while, but that was a great key target for us, and it worked out very well. Got us to get in to design some neat beers. The whole direction of our focus on our brewery and our beers is we believe everything pairs well with beer, and that's from cheeses, breads, incredible entrees, cigars, even spirits. So with that kind of understanding, we started doing a little more of our direction, and we quickly realized that people really, instead of just having create one beer for their restaurant, they're really more excited about having 3, 4, even 5 taps of our beer on deck.
Okay, cool. So you have your own line going now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We keep about 15 different beers in rotation. We've got, I've got over 100+ recipes that we do.
Are you going to continue to contract brew once the new place gets open?
We're talking with more franchise restaurants located in our area, and they've shown some big interest in that.
All right.
So
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, yes, it looks like that's still a very positive direction for us to go.
Cool. Now let's go deep, Eric. Tell us the biggest mistake you ever made as a brewery owner.
The biggest one? The biggest one I can tell you right out of the gate is thinking I could do this all alone. It's interesting because it's my dream, my passion, my obsession to create this brewery, but I quickly realized that my knowledge it wasn't as vast as I needed. But I addressed this and tried to push forward, basically doing this, my way, just simply my way. And that was my biggest mistake. And once I realized how to correct the mistake, incredible people started coming my way. One, my wife, Pamela Allen. She's a big driving force on this whole project. She's the smarts as I stay in the creative world. And so we've got a great team. But, I would have to say, trying to think I could do this all alone.
So if you could start your brewery over again, is that what you would change, or is there something else that you would do differently to do it better?
If I could do it over again, I would have to say that I would actually question the comments and advice I got from so many, quote, professional people that are in the industry. I kind of went into it listening to some individuals. It's a double-edged sword. You seek out great people to work with you, but next thing you know, you're paying these people and you're not getting paid. and you're walking away with information that you may or may not use. So I would have to say blind faith. I probably wouldn't go into it that way. I believe it's better to follow your gut, be true to yourself and listen to yourself and follow that way. And what's interesting is, yes, we lost some valuable time stumbling with people we thought were, really on board with us. But it's interesting how time can heal when you get the right people that come forward. And now we've got this dynamic team that's just amazing. And I'm more than welcome and willing to share those people and their contact information to help any other brewer that's looking at expanding or starting in the industry.
I was looking back at what you contributed to Joe Shellerud's article, 61 Brewers Speak Out. And you said when you were starting out, there were a lot of people who told you what to do, but only one person told you what not to do.
Yeah, that was a great moment in time. Again, when my wife and I jumped into this, we started listening to a lot of people that kind of telling us exactly what we should do and how we should do our recipes and things of this nature. And we said, let's just take a back step here. We did, and we decided to seek out 40. We went to 48 different breweries from Florida to Cleveland, Ohio to San Diego and everything in between. And it was great because we didn't go just to taste beers. That was the benefit of the trip. But we actually seeked out owners and brewers to see if we could talk with them. And it was interesting because a lot of people were telling us what to do, what to look for. And we walked away from one brewery that gave us more insight than all of them combined. And that was the great people over at Avery Brewery in Colorado. We walked in and they said, hey, we could probably give you about 30 minutes. Next thing I know, we're in there 3.5 hours, and they were telling us what not to do. And they even started off with, I'm sure we could tell you, be redundant and tell you what the same thing other brewers are telling you what to do, but let's talk about what not to do. And that was a true gift. And we applied every bit of that.
What was the number one thing?
Location. Make sure you find a location that you can expand and grow with. Because they, in their situation, they're in an industrial park, and as they started growing and expanding, there were tenants next door that were in leases and did not want to move, so they had to go around the back of them and to the side of them and things of this nature. And then about the time they spent all that, excess of monies for piping and things of that, the logistics of all that, well, their lease is up and they've moved. So, so when we walked away from that was location. Keep it all as tight as you can, workspace, make it efficient. But again, have an area to where you can expand.
You've been brewing it for your business for a few years. What's the best idea you've ever had for your business?
That's a great question, and the only way I can answer it is I was interviewed by someone the other day that was like, you're the type of guy that brews beer. Do you color inside the line or outside the line? I sat there for a second, and my reply was, actually, there is no coloring book. There's no book at all. There are no lines. I respect the styles that of the beer styles that have been set forth, centuries ago. But the truth of the matter is, best idea, run wild with it. Try to create something that people will tag you later on in time and say, man, that was the best beer ever. So with us, we enjoy acquiring different types of barrels, wine barrels, tequila barrels, rum barrels, bourbon barrels, I just actually scored some extra Yeho tequila barrels that are over 30 years old. We've got beer fermenting in them right now.
How many times can you use them?
I actually use them just once. I know of a couple of breweries that'll use them a couple times. With us, the way we treat them, so we can actually ferment into them, we want to extract all of that incredible yumminess that has been soaked into the grains of the wood and into the pores of the wood. So when we're done with them, they're pretty much finished. We do make furniture out of them.
So do you have a favorite memory since opening your brewery?
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, there's three, if you don't mind. When we decided to become a brewery, we actually opened up our doors in 2011, and a local person here decided to throw an Oktoberfest in downtown Kingsport. And, let's just face it, we were a little nervous coming with our beers because there were going to be 4,000 people there. Well, once we got set up and it started, we had a line of over 140 people deep for 5 hours, coming up just getting 2-ounce pours. Everybody else was giving 6-ounce pours. We were only giving 2 ounce because we weren't sure how long our beer was going to last. How long we were afraid we were going to run out. And it was interesting because there were people getting in line for a 2-ounce pour and immediately getting back in line because we brought 7 different beers. And then what was really incredible is watching other brewers from other breweries get in line, not cut line or come to the side. They stood in line and then stood there and talked with us for a moment. So that was one of our greatest moments. The second one is basically, like I said, when people come up and say, I was talking to a friend of mine. You did that Dragon's Lair, which was a smoked Chipotle bourbon barrel robust porter. It tastes more like a Mollet than it did a beer. It's like, man, that was the greatest beer ever. I didn't know who that individual was at the time. I do know him by name now, but it was interesting that, we were actually 200 miles away from our brewery, and this person walked up to me. He saw my shirt with my Studio Brew logo on it. But the biggest thing I got to say is people who believe in my dream, people who've been following us and working with us, and now we've got, angel investors, and we've got architects and contractors, and, it's just people who have come to help this dream become a reality on our new expansion.
That's pretty cool. So there's somebody out there listening who wants to do what you've done. What could you tell an aspiring home brewer? What's the most important thing for someone starting a brewery for them to start doing tomorrow?
First, you got to realize that you just cannot make a brewery profitable with a good beer. You really got to make something that stands out. And there's so many incredible beers that are being created even while we're talking. So you want to take something really, really good and make it great. And get your friends, get people that'll be honest with you that taste it. And if you really get that camaraderie and people really start insisting you do it, become a brewer, then try to talk yourself out of it. And if you can't do that, then you've got the dream that's becoming a passion. And once it becomes an obsession, then your life's going to change. And what you want to do is start seeking out people that you can trust and work with, and start promoting yourself. Get your beer out there and let people taste it. Don't get discouraged. You're going to hit walls. As we say, we wear Kevlar here. We take hits every day, but it doesn't slow us down. We just keep moving forward. So no is not an answer. persistence is the norm. And next thing you know, little bits of negatives turn into positives. And then next thing you know, you're going to sit back and you go, I've done it. I've created a brewery.
Fantastic. So now we have a question from one of our listeners, Mel Troja, who asks, is a nano brew pub always easier to start and sustain than a production nano brewery?
The nano brew pub, we really didn't get into the restaurant direction. I've got too many friends that own restaurants, and it's just not our direction. The thing is by having a nano brewery with a brew pub, kind of a direction, you've got food and you're catering to your beer, and sometimes you can get sideways. Instead of being focused on the beer, now you're focusing on the food and the growth of the restaurant direction. I really like the art direction, which was get into the packaging, nano brewery, get our beers out there in kegs, and then start creating some neat stuff. But something that we really did that was fantastic was we incorporated now a dear friend, Michael Landis, who is probably one of the world's greatest cheese gurus out there. He's an incredible instructor, and we actually had a beer and cheese pairing, and we called in a chef, Martin Stir-Fry. He created some incredible entrees. And then we quickly realized when people were paying $60, $70 a head for a 2-hour event, and they're still talking about it to this day, and it's been over a year, that what we need to do is just keep this kind of a direction going. So we reached out, started hosting beer and cheese pairings, even spirit and wine pairings, and have chefs, and we do private events, and that's been a great way to do it. So the long answer to your question is packaging brewing gives you more opportunities to expand and branch out, opposed to being more of a brew pub where you're centrally located.
Great. Thanks. That's a lot of great advice. Thanks for that perspective. But now it's time for happy hour. The next set of questions are a little bit lighter. We're going to get to know each other a little better, have some fun, and get inside the industry. Are you ready, Eric?
Of course. Cans
or bottles?
You got a guy that's standing on the fence. We're looking at buying a $300,000 plus bottling line. In the meantime, we are talking with, mobile canning companies. There's still that stigma of a can. A case in point, I was standing at a incredible beer store one evening, and I was looking at a bottle of beer, and it had the basket and the crown cap of the cork and the whole thing, and it was $32. $32 for a 750 milliliter bottle. And to the side of it was a can that was probably 32, 34 ounces, standing there next to it for $8. And it was interesting because I had to ask myself, would I actually pay $8 for a canned beer? Now, we all know cans are lighter, easy for shipping. The beer stays fresher. There's no light. If it's done right, the carbonation is fantastic. Once it's popped open, there you are. It's ready to go, and it's just beautiful. But I think there's still that stigma. And once that stigma is finally gone, and then we'll be all in. But it's hard to, did I justify myself buying that bottle for $32? Of course I did. On the $8, well, I went ahead and bought it. I got to tell you, the one in the can was just as good.
What's the most challenging beer you've ever made?
The most challenging beer? The one we're doing right now with this 30-plus-year-old extra Yeho tequila barrel. Quick story is, it was a Heaven Hills whiskey barrel out of Kentucky, bourbon barrel. Got down to South America and became an extra Yeho rum barrel, and then migrated up to Mexico. And then basically we finally got the opportunity to get score some of these. And we're doing an Imperial IPA right now with basically, a boatload of different types of hops. And we actually smoked our own agave to put into the fermentation. So we've been watching this bad boy do its thing. It's kind of interesting. It started fermenting for about 10 days. And so we were letting it settle to do our dry hop. And dang it didn't start fermenting again. So we're really curious what's going on there. Something wild got in there and started doing its thing. Every sample we take, it's just mind-blowing. And we're getting ready to put about 16 pounds of green hops, tone hops in it. And they cover that bunghole, which plug it up, and which is really cool because green hops will actually produce its own CO2 after a period of time. And so that'll be awful interesting to see what happens.
Is that going to go into a bottle? Where can I get that in California?
Well, basically right now I think what we're going to do is offer that one in kegs and growlers.
Sounds phenomenal.
We'll have to wait. Thank you. We'll have to wait until we get the new brewery up and running and get the bottling line in.
If you're going to make a 5-gallon batch at home this weekend, what beer would you make?
Ooh, okay. Right now, black sweet cherries from Yakima are about $1.99 to $2.99 a pound. And I would probably do like a Belgian dark strong and grab some of those cherries and puree them and actually ferment them. Do a second fermentation on something like that. Yeah, that's what I would do this weekend. Have it ready for the holidays.
Tell me one beer style that you think will be gaining more attention.
The session beers, the IPA sessions are really starting to take focus. And, a year or so ago, you didn't see that much of the heavy market being popular. You see a lot of people really pushing those out. We actually kind of went with Wiesenbach and Dunkelbach, following my German roots. So I'd like to see more of that type of direction kick in.
Can you suggest a book for our audience that will help them succeed in opening a brewery?
Oh, sure. There's actually a couple that I ended up going with. And, one is the Starting Your Own Brewery, the second edition from Dick Cantwell. Yeah, that's it. And, of course, Sam Calazone's book on starting a brewery, brewing up a business, that's a great book. But the one book that I keep going back to, and I've read over 11 times, is a fabulous book. It's called The Art of War by Sun Tzu. It was basically a book created and written by an incredible Chinese master of military. But when you start taking that information and start applying it into a business direction, and then you start, looking at it in ways of doing a brewery, it just clicked for me. One chapter that it talks about is taking the high ground. That goes back to real estate, location, finding somewhere where you can dig in and expand and grow from. That it's a fabulous book, and it also got me to start thinking about how I can get other directions to work with me, alliances. The book talks about that. So again, that book, The Art of War, you can find it in variations of business and entrepreneurs and stuff like that. But that book, to its raw sense, has basically got me to where I'm at today.
That's awesome. I've heard a lot of people recommend that book on other entrepreneurial podcasts that I listen to. and I bought it. It's on my reading list, but I haven't read it yet. I'm looking forward to it. The Art of War. So give us one last piece of advice for someone who just brewed the first batch at their new brewery, and then we'll close up the brew house for the night.
First piece of advice? First of all, step back, think about it, what you've just accomplished, and then pour you a nice glass, depending on which beer it is. Make sure you got the right glass, but smell it. Let your palate, let your mind, let all your senses come to life, and then have the opportunity to taste it and sit back and smile, because that's what you just did. Nobody else can manufacture what you just did. You're not selling some other brand or anything of this nature. You're selling yourself and your creation, your dream, your passion. And what's really cool is if you've done it right, you're going to be able to sell it to those who really love craft beer. And that's what it's all about. Make beer, craft beer, to share with those who love beer.
Well, it's been cool talking with you, Eric. Thanks for all the great stories, and thanks for your advice on starting and operating a successful brewery. So tell us how we can stay in touch with you, and then we'll set this episode aside to ferment.
Thank you, Nathan. I really enjoyed this. I'm sorry if I got a little long-winded. Hopefully you could condense a little bit, but, reach out. You can catch me at Eric, ERICH, at studiobrew.net. You can follow us on Facebook and, of course, Twitter. Also, what I've done, worked with such dynamic people that we finally honed in this great group. We actually created a consulting group called Grain and Vine Design Studio, and we're helping several wineries. We've got 3 or 4 new breweries starting up. We're actually working with a distiller now. So it's just fabulous. I mean, we got Audrey Gazunas from Brew for Her Ledger, LLC. Great person to help you with all types of stuff. So contact me, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to send references and contact information from all these people. FMD Architects, Klein Construction. It's just amazing, the people that we've got on board.
Awesome. I'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes page too.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thanks again, Eric Allen, for being on MicroBrewr Podcast. I really appreciate you for taking the time out for the interview and for all of your great stories. It was so cool speaking with Eric. I felt like I was right there with him along in all of those adventures. He lists so many great resources and so much great information. I packed a bunch of links into the show notes page, including the new book not yet mentioned on this podcast, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I'd heard so much about that book in other entrepreneur podcasts that I actually picked up a copy for myself, and I haven't read it yet. But when Eric mentioned it in this episode, I looked up more about him on Wikipedia. He actually lived in the 500s and 400s BC. He was a Chinese military general, a strategist, and philosopher. He was super influential throughout Asian culture, and The Art of War is even on the U.S. Marine Corps professional reading program. So check out that and the other resources for today's episode at microbrewer.com/session25. Thank you everyone for listening. I can't believe it's episode 25 already. I'm looking forward to speaking to so many more brewery owners, and soon we'll have some guests from other parts of the industry too. So I hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you are, please leave a review in iTunes and let me know how I'm doing. If you need a link, you can find it at microbrewer.com/iTunes, and I'll try to read your review on the podcast. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, support your local brewery, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to MicroBrewr Podcast with Nathan Pierce. We'll see you right here next time at microbrewer.com.
If you want more resources for starting a craft brewery, check out microbrewer.com, microbrewer.com. If you want to become a Cicerone certified beer server, check out beerexamschool.com for free study guide and flashcards for the certified beer server exam. beerexamschool.com.